All right, so we already have hundreds of people joining us live on Zoom and on Facebook Live, so let's get started. So we have a full hour for today's webinar. Again, please put in the chat on Zoom and on Facebook Live your name, where you're calling in from today, your connection to University of Haifa or to ASUH, and how you heard about this webinar. I see we already have people joining us from around the world, which is always wonderful. And we always have repeat viewers every webinar, as well as new people. So welcome to everyone joining us today. My name is Naomi Reinharz. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the American Society of University of Haifa. I am calling in from Miami. As always, we really appreciate all of you who are joining us today. I want to start by saying Happy New Year to all of you. I hope everyone had a nice holiday and a little bit of vacation time and some time for rest and relaxation. I'm thrilled to introduce you to our two illustrious guest speakers today. We have former Attorney General of Israel and one of the top legal minds of the country, Avihai Mandelblit. And we also welcome back, as always, Dov Weissglas, who is the chair of the executive committee of the University of Haifa and the former Director General of Israel's Prime Minister's office under former Prime Minister Ariel Sharon. Avi Mandelblit served as the country's Attorney General between 2016 and 2022. He had a storied career in the Israel Defense Forces legal system, where he served as the Chief Military Advocate General and the Cabinet Secretary. He's also extremely familiar with the Gaza Strip, where he was a former military prosecutor for the Southern Command, and he served as a judge on the military court of the Gaza region. In today's unique perspective on the current war between Israel and Hamas, Avi will share how Israel is adhering to the laws of war and the obstacles associated with doing so. He will also share his thoughts on what should happen next for the region and to the people of Gaza as Israel continues in this war. Before we start, I also want to take this opportunity, as always, to first of all thank all of our many supporters around the United States and around the world. At University of Haifa, we are thrilled that we finally got to go back to class. Classes resumed for this current semester on December 31st, the last day of 2023. I'm sure many of you saw some of the articles in the New York Times and Boston Globe and elsewhere about all the students coming back to school at University of Haifa, as well as across Israel. It was obviously a very momentous occasion to welcome back so many students who haven't been able to go to class for the last few months. After we delayed the start of the new school year for nearly 3 months amid the October 7th terrorist attack and the ensuing war with Hamas, it's been a really exciting and also challenging time for people coming back to school. We obviously still have many students and faculty who are serving in the reserves, and they will come back to class as soon as they're able to. So the start of the current academic year will have 2 phases, the first of which began last Sunday, the second of which will begin in a few weeks for the reservists. And we'll conduct the second phase in coordination with the IDF. They'll have a condensed week of studies to bring them up to speed on what they might have missed the last few weeks. University of Haifa will continue to play a crucial role in ensuring that all sectors of the population are able to come together and rebuild the diverse civic society in Israel in the aftermath of October 7th. Over the past few months, we've had 1,150 students and 50 faculty members serving in the reserves, including 300 students in the security forces. So as part of our scholarship fund for reserve soldiers, we've been providing emergency scholarships of around $500 or 2,000 shekels to every one of these student soldiers. With your help, we can continue to increase this fund and ensure that our brave student soldiers who have been serving and defending our country so bravely for over 3 months have the financial assistance that they and their families really desperately need as they attempt to return to some degree of normal life and prepare to re-embark on their studies. For those of you who wish to continue to contribute to this fund, please visit asuh.org/donate, and we'll put that link in the chat. I know that so many of our soldiers are so grateful to those of you who have already contributed, and anything you can do to continue to help them is much appreciated. So without further ado, I'm delighted to give you over to Avi Mandelblit and Dov Weissglas. We're going to speak until around 1:40, and then we'll have a Q&A section at the end of the webinar. So please keep putting your questions in the Q&A section. I'll address them in the second half of the webinar on Zoom and on Facebook Live. And for those of you who always ask, we will be recording this webinar. We'll share that recording with you later this week, and then you can rewatch it or share with others. So Dov, please take it from here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Naomi. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and have a wonderful afternoon. It is a privilege to host today General in Retirement Avihai Mandelblit, who combines so many qualifications together. I mean, he was the Judge Advocate General of the Israeli Defense Forces in the rank of a general, later the Cabinet Secretary, later the Attorney General. He is a professor for international law at Bar-Ilan University and handled some very well-known and severe cases of some of our international complications. If everybody remembers the events following the Via Marmara, this Turkish boat trying to break the siege around Gaza, which unfortunately it was developed into a very hostile clash between the Israeli Navy and the boat people. He also dealt very successfully with the Lauser report issued by Goldstone, by the South African jurist. By the way, apparently South Africa became a very bitter enemy, as we all will see tomorrow when the International Court of Justice in Hague will resume proceedings against Israel, proceedings which were initiated by the South Africans. So, Avi, thank you very much for joining us. The first topic I would like you to clarify is this bunch of murderers, otherwise known as Hamas. What is their legal status? I mean, in the eyes of international law and as well as in the eyes of the Israeli law. What kind of, speaking from the legal perspective, responsibility they were given that so far many hundreds of them were detained by the Israeli Defense Forces, and actually they are kept in custody in Israel?
Well, thank you, Dovi. First of all, it's really a pleasure to be here. The University of Haifa is very close to my heart, and I'm not saying it only because I'm here, because I really do think so. It's a wonderful place, it's a family actually. And although I live far away, speaking US manner, it's not so far, but I live near Tel Aviv, Petach Tikva, which is a place that you should only sleep there. But the University of Haifa is a very unique and special place, and it's very close to my heart. And the only problem is that the Dubi is closer to my heart. This is the only competition, and it's a tough one. So thank you very much for asking me to join this unique meeting, conversation. So relating to what is happening, actually, unfortunately, legally speaking, it's quite simple. First of all, if we take international law, then there is no doubt. The law, there's an action for aggression. Actually, the international law divides into two. First of all, the issue what we call jus ad bellum, which is starting a war. And then there's an issue of aggression. There is no question that was a clear act of aggression against the state of Israel and its inhabitants. There's no question about it. But the more problematic thing is when you come into war, then how do you conduct war? And this is being dealt by the laws of armed conflict or the international humanitarian law. Now, what is the difference between these two paradigms? Laws of armed conflict, what you call LOEC, or international humanitarian law, which is IHL. What is the difference? Actually, there is no difference. But when you come to speak with especially officers in the US military or in the IDF, they use the term of laws of armed conflict. When you come to the academic, even in Israel, and especially in the US, they will talk about international humanitarian law, and it's the same in Europe. Now, actually, as I told you, there is no difference. I'm going to give a very small introduction because it's important for the rest of the conversation. There are 4 basic rules. The first one is that you only attack when there is a military necessity. You cannot attack a civilian object or a civilian in purpose. Only military combatants or military targets. The second one is the principle of distinction. You should do your utmost to distinguish between civilians and combatants. You fight combatants, even those who are illegal combatants, and we will soon relate to the Hamas, but you fight only them. You do not fight children, women, elder, who do not take part in the hostilities. The third one, what do you do when things are combined? For example, there is an house, and there are rockets in the cellar, and there's a family with two babies on those rockets, sleeping on those rockets. What do you do then? So then there's the principle of proportionality. You should see if the military advantage that you take from this attack is not excessive to the collateral damage being done to the civilians. And the last one is humanity, which deals mostly, I'm not going to go into it, with special kinds of weapons that you use. You're not allowed to use any kind of weapons, but the most important for our conversation are the three first principles. Now, when you talk about terror organization, which are actually, they are not terror organizations, they are terror militaries, then the most important thing is that one side is obliged to go with all those principles that I referred to, which is the military, the Israeli military, the US military, the British military. They act only according to the laws of war, to the laws of armed conflict. But the other side is doing its utmost to abuse those rules and do double war crimes. First of all, it uses civilians as human shields, and it drags you in purpose to places where there are lots of civilians that are the inhabitants are together. That soldiers with the civilians, everybody is together. It's not like fighting in El Alamein when Rommel and Montgomery fought against each other. It's not like the IDF fought the Egyptian army in Sinai or Suez. It's not like fighting the Syrian army in Golan Heights. So they drag us in purpose to places where there are lots of civilians, and what they wish is that the IDF will target the civilians because they don't have any choice. Because if they don't want to find the rockets in the homes, they must hit the rockets. But the rockets are under kindergartens, in UNRWA, in the UNRWA facilities, under hospitals, and also the combatants are there. So you don't have any choice. So this is the first thing. The second war crime is they shoot intentionally Israeli civilians. So this is what we call asymmetric warfare. Asymmetric warfare is not that the one side is strong militarily and the other side is weak, because Hamas is not a weak military, and certainly Hezbollah is not a weak military, and so is ISIS or Al-Qaeda. They are not weak. The thing is that one side is entitled to do its utmost to go according to the rules of war, and the other one is doing its utmost to abuse the rules of war. This is asymmetric warfare. And when you deal with asymmetric warfare, then first of all, you're in a situation of war. Then you can use all the laws that entitled you to fight military, which is all the laws I explained. You are not entitled to say, if the other side does not obey them, then I will not obey them also, because you must obey them. This is concerning the IDF. But when you talk about Hamas, there are certainly war criminals. There's no question about it. They can be targeted. They can be killed. First resort, you do not have to warn them or something like this. They are combatants. It's true, they are illegal combatants. So this leads me to the second issue of the internal Israeli law. When they are illegal combatants, then they are not entitled to the status of prisoners of war, because they are war criminals. So you can try them in criminal matter, and this situation is open, but it's not a legal question. It's very easy. They do not deserve any defense given to prisoners of war, because they are not prisoners of war, because those who fight not according to the laws of armed conflict, not according to international humanitarian law, they are not entitled to any defense according to international law. Therefore, you can use regular criminal law against them. And in this case, These are the worst crimes committed to humanity. Actually, it's a genocide. Killing, raping, beheading people only because they are Jews, and those who are not Jews because they work with Jews.
Thank you. Thank you. You stated the 4 essential rules of the international law relate to a warfare effort. I would like now to focus specifically about what is happening in Gaza. We all learn from the media, whether it's a local media or international media, about a very large extent of destruction happens in Gaza. Also, some pretty substantial numbers of civilians who were either killed or wounded. Do you have any doubts whether the IDF complies with the laws of war in this particular warfare in Gaza? As I said, given the extent of the damage to property as well as to life of the local ones.
So actually, it relates to the first explanation, and this is truly the problem. They're saying, you know, if it walks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, then it's a duck. But in this case, it's not a duck, because the strategy of Hamas, of Islamic Jihad, of Hezbollah, and of any other terror organization, and actually I said not a terror organization, but terror army. The strategy is to frame it, is to try to people to think that you are committing war crimes. But the question of proportionality is not being taken in the overall picture, but you take target by target. And the question is, if there are soldiers who deliberately killed civilians who are or the combat, so out of the war, is there any Israeli soldier who deliberately killed a child or an old person, knowingly that is not a combatant? And for my knowledge, the answer is no. There is definitely not such comments. The policy, although we have problems with very problematic manners of speaking of politicians, usually from lower levels, not the highest levels, but the policy, and I know it, being put to the military, and the orders of the chief of staff, Herzi Halevi, and the orders of all the officers, and what they are telling the soldiers to do is to apply the rules that I've explained earlier. Those principles are being strictly fulfilled during this very problematic fight. But the fight is problematic because, as I explained earlier, civilians are there. They are combined with the combatants, especially in the earlier part of the war, in the northern part, before they were warned and told to leave, which was not like they said. It's not just a deportation; it was evacuation in order to protect them. And I know there's also claims about this, but I know the rules. I know they fulfill the rules. I know they have legal advice by the current JEG of Israel and by the current Attorney General. I know that what they're telling them. I know they participate in all the cabinet meetings. They participate in all the military planning. They are sitting in the places where targets are being planned. Military advisors. There are over, I don't know if you know it, but there are over 200 lawyers, usually reserved, who are being there in the bases of the IDF, planning together with the commanders every attack, every target. And I think that if you look for the truth, then the answer is definitely no. We do not do anything that is against the rules of law, certainly not in purpose. But there is problem because the situation is problematic, because they intentionally uses civilians as human shields. They intentionally uses the kindergartens, the UNRWA refugee, the UNRWA camps, universities, mosques, every places that hospitals, of course. The tunnels are those places. So we know the way they fight. So this is the way that asymmetric war is being held all over the world, not only in Gaza. And they try to frame us. They try to use the rules of war in order to abuse the rules of war in order to try to make it seems like the IDF or Israel is not acting according to those rules, but this is a lie.
With your permission, I would like you to comment on two specific issues related to this situation that, again, also were very sort of broadly covered by international media. One is to expel of several 100,000, I think it's even 1 million of Gazans from North Gaza to South Gaza. And the second measure that apparently is taken by Israel is a siege, actually, to disconnect Gaza from Israel. It was disconnected long ago, but also from Egypt, which of course causes a situation of a radical shortage of food, water, drugs, and other supplies needed for a daily life of the Gazans. Are those two measures get along or comply with the basic international rule of war?
First of all, the answer is yes. And it depends in the way that you do it. Deportation is not legal. You are not allowed to expel the inhabitants of Gaza, of any other place that is a zone of war. You are not allowed to do it. But there is a rule. Actually, there are those who say this is the fifth rule. But most scholars say this is part of the rule of distinction, which is precautions. Precautions is you have to warn when civilians are being mixed with combatants, then you must try to separate them. And how do you separate them? You warn them. You say, look, you are in a zone of war. We are going to shoot there. We're going to be very drastic. You use drastic measures in these areas. So you're going to be hit if you're going to stay there. So go away. We are going to open you corridors, humanitarian corridors, to a safe zone. When in this safe zone, you will be safe. And there's another two conditions. First of all, is that you will have the supplies, humanitarian basic supplies. It's not that you'll have the 24/7 electricity and I don't know, you're not only spoiled there, but you must have the water supply, fuel, food, and this is the first condition. The second one is the moment that the war is ended and hostilities are over, then you will be allowed to return to your homes. These are the conditions, and you must stand by them. So when President Biden, in the famous speech he gave, and you can see that he was with us because he saw the atrocities. He was furious. You can see it from his eyes. He was furious with us as it happened. And he said, you are going to fight. Hamas is not legal. He cannot stay there anymore, on the one hand. On the other hand, Israel must fulfill all its duties according to the laws of war. He said the laws of war, which is the laws of armed conflict, the LOEC or IHL. So this is what we must do. And unfortunately, at the beginning, we didn't say it. And it was a mistake. Now we should say it from the beginning. It took us several days, and then we said it. And not only did we say it, we did it because we opened humanitarian aid to the civilians. So on the one hand, it's not only legal to tell them to go out of the northern part because the northern part is going to be bombarded very, very dramatically from there, and those who are going to stay there are going to might be killed. So then the numbers will not be so, the numbers are not good because there are lots of civilians being killed, but the numbers can be 4 or 5 times more if they will stay there. So the first thing is we want them because this is not only is a legal issue, it's our duty the precautions. It's our duty according to the IHL to tell them to go away from there because it's dangerous to be there. And we opened the humanitarian corridors, 2 humanitarian corridors that to the safe zone in the Mouassi, in the southern part of Gaza. This was the first thing. And then it took us several days. And I told them all the time, you must say it. And actually they did say it. They let the supplies go in, humanitarian needs, and they said that this is only a temporary measure. And when the hostilities will be over, they will be allowed to go back to the northern part. So this is the first issue. The second issue, the issue of the siege. Siege is legal. Actually, if you remember the Malvinas or the Falkland War, the British Navy closed all the southern part of the Atlantic Ocean. Everything was closed there. So it is legal. We are not the British Navy, and Gaza is a little smaller than Argentina, but it's the same. If you know that if you will let a free passage from the sea, for example, you know that weapons will be in there. And every boat, every ship can bring. You mentioned the Mavi Marmara. This was a try to break the blockade, and the blockade is legal. The Palmer Commission, International Commission, said it was legal, by the way, after the Mavi Marmara incident. But it is legal. Still, if you have a siege, and the siege is not total because there is the open part from the Philadelphia to Egypt. There is a part that humanitarian aid can be brought from there. Nevertheless, humanitarian aid is not being brought from Israel, from Kerem Shalom passage, for example. So if you give them humanitarian needs, basic humanitarian needs, if you say it's temporary, then it is legal because you want to win the war. And if you want to win the war, you must have a siege, the way it is being managed, and you must try to separate the best way you can, and it doesn't work perfectly, it's true, from civilians, from combatants.
Thank you. Tomorrow, the International Court of Justice in Hague will assume its deliberation in a complaint submitted by South Africa against Israel, accusing Israel actually in war crimes, genocide, etc. Firstly, would you be so kind just to describe the process? I mean, how it goes, and theoretically or hypothetically, or we all hope it will not get to that, but assuming that that an opinion is issued by the court blaming Israel in a war crime or genocide, what might be the practical or the non-practical consequences in the international arena or otherwise?
Thank you, Ruby. So first of all, I will let you very shortly or briefly in a strategic manner. This is what we call lawfare. Lawfare is a method of war. By the way, that the first name was being thought of by one of my friends. His name was Major General Charlie Dunlop Jr. He was the deputy JAG of the Air Force of the United States, and it was in the year of 2001. And he was the first one who was thinking about this term. What he said, when you deal with democratic countries, with liberal public, that it's important for this public to know that those who are fighting in his name are applying the rules of war, and it's important to them to keep basic, basic principles of war. It's important for them. And if they find that their soldiers murder civilians or kids, they will not let it go. So we understood that this is very important. Now, those who try to stop the war, the basic thing that they do is a method of war. It's a method of war. They use the law as a weapon, and it's a very important weapon, and it's very actually it's very persuasive weapon, and it can stop the war. It simply can stop the war. Now, what they are trying to do is to say that Israel actually is war criminal. It's a leopard country. That its policy is to make genocide. And it's not only that Israel is trying to murder all Palestinians, but they're trying to get them into, and this is also why it is not wise to say you will not have water, you will not have food, you will not have fuel. It's not wise, because if this is what is being done, then the situation is that the civilians are going to die because they don't have basic supplies. There are diseases, there are lack of food, water. They might starve to death. So this is what they claim. And in this manner, what they try to do is to make an injunction that says that Israel must stop the war immediately. Now, this ICJ, the ICJ is a very important institution. It's the basic institution of the United Nations. It was created after the Second World War, and it relates also to the Genocide Convention, which Israel is a part to this convention. And it signed it, by the way, where did it come, this convention? Because of the Holocaust. Because of the Holocaust. And Israel was one of the first countries that signed on this convention, and it's true. Now, according to this convention, where there is a dispute concerning, for example, one party that signed this convention, there are more than 150 countries that signed this convention, says that another party is committing genocide, then they go to the court. Which court? The ICJ. And Israel signed it. They agree to go to the ICJ whenever such a claim is being made, like any other country that signed this convention. So the question of the possibility to claim that this court does not have a jurisdiction of the case is very weak. That is why I think wisely Israeli agreed to cooperate and go there, and have one of the great scholars of international law, Malcolm Shaw, who claim from Israel, and also have a certain judge, which all of us are familiar with, and I think it truly is one of his kind. And nobody could say everybody is best, and it simply is a true Zionist. It truly sacrifices himself for the country, and he goes there. And he's going to be honest, by the way. He's not going to do any discount for Israel. He's going to go for the truth. And now this is dangerous. Why is it so dangerous? Because indeed, it will take time, 3, 4, 5 years until the decision will be taken, and until the time we will prove that everything that was told about us was a lie, and we'll get out of it. Okay, but what will be in the meantime? So there was a possibility within the frame time of 2 weeks, maybe even less. They say because people are being murdered there, civilians being murdered, people are being starved to death, there will be diseases. We don't have time, so stop the war. And that is the purpose, the strategic purpose. Actually, it's a military purpose. The Palestinian, in this case, the Palestinian Authority, they're making lawfare, and they go to the friends, the South Africa, and they tell them, as a proxy, go there and get this injunction saying that Israel must stop the war immediately. And if this injunction is being taken and the court decides, the majority, that Israel must stop the war, it's not that Israel will stop the war. And indeed, it is entitled to fulfill the orders of the court. But Israel might try to go on fighting. But what will be about friends? What will be about the veto, the U.S. veto in the Security Council? I don't know if you know the situation of the Security Council. Today, out of 15 members of the Security Council, 13 are against Israel. They say you must stop the war immediately. One is abstained, Britain, and only one objects and put a veto, which is the US. But what will be the situation about the US if the ICJ say they are committing genocide? Then we have a problem. What will be the position of the US? What will be the position of the US and of European countries about giving military weapons to Israel, and we need these weapons. We need this with this air train going from the US and from Europe. There are also ingredients from Europe to come to Israel. There are laws in the US and in Europe saying that if a country commits war crimes, then you cannot help them, especially not in military manners. So this is very, very dangerous. It's not a simple matter. I wouldn't recommend to say shmum. Yes, it's not. It's dangerous. Hopefully, like they say, the truth is also a possibility, and hopefully they will do what is true, and the things will be better. Now there is another possibility there, and this is the last thing I'm going to say about this. Now they're going to take a decision. So what the South African wish is that the decision will be stop the war immediately. But what can happen is they might take a different decision, saying maybe not taking a decision, hopefully, but even if they do take a decision, they might say something like this. We expect every party to fulfill the laws of war, the IHL, and to do the utmost to give humanitarian aids to the civilians that are being in the midst of the war. So if this will be the case, it's okay, because we agree to it, I think.
Thank you. And my last question before we are handing you over to our audience questions is, you know, there is a debate in Israel, which I'm sure everybody is familiar with. What should be the day after? What would happen with Gaza once the hostilities are over? And one of the proposals is a continuing military presence in Gaza, namely that the IDF will redeploy in Gaza after that. In the 2005 disengagement, of course, the military pulled out from Gaza, and will to continue to hold Gaza militarily for unlimited period of time, assuming that will be the solution. What it means in the eyes of international law, and what is the nature of liability it would impose on us, would it happen?
So first of all, there's a question, what will the exact position of the IDF troops in Gaza? But if it is occupied, the places that are occupied, I know there are people who think otherwise, but in my point of view, if you occupy a place, then you have the responsibility over the inhabitants of the place. I'm relating to the civilians, not to the terrorists. But you have a responsibility for them. You have to take care of the basic needs. And if you don't want to have this responsibility, then you can find the solution. You must find a solution that somebody else will take this responsibility. For example, I'm not saying about Gaza. I'm not going to be into trouble. But for example, in Judea and Samaria, then these are a Palestinian authority who take care of the inhabitants in the Palestinian cities. Otherwise, it will be the responsibility of Israel. And it's the same in every other place. If you occupy a place, then you must take care of the civilians there. It's your responsibility, and if you don't want it, then find someone else who will.
I understand. Mr. Mandelblit, thank you very much. And we will open now the session for questions. So I will hand over the mic to Naomi.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Avi and Dubi. This has been fascinating. And as always, we have hundreds of comments and questions from our audience. So I'm going to do my best to consolidate as many as I can in the next 20 minutes or so.
Avi is a retired general, not busy at all. So you
Not
may
busy.
take the time as long as you want.
I heard
there's a soccer player in mind.
I was about to say there's a soccer game that I know Avi wants to go watch, so I want to be mindful and
All right.
No one wants to take anyone away from soccer.
Okay.
But we appreciate your time. So first question is for Avi. Considering the question you just answered about South Africa, a lot of questions from South Africa from the audience. There's a lot of members of the audience actually who live in South Africa, who have firsthand sort of knowledge and experience of the current South African government. A question that's come up a lot is, can Israel sort of copy what South Africa is doing and initiate similar proceedings against either UNRWA or Hamas or Iran in The Hague or another international court? Would that be wise? Would Israel win? What would that accomplish? And how would sort of the court handle that kind of case?
First of all, Israel can be done. I'm not sure it will be wise. In my point of view, maybe there are those things otherwise, but in my point of view, these countries, unlike Israel, and unlike Israel partners in the Western world, they don't care about human rights. They don't care about being part of the public. It's like, you know, I don't want to get in trouble with the Russians, but the ICJ said you must stop the war in Ukraine. So they said, why do they care about this? So they said it's not the same with Israel. So, for example, they say let's give a complaint in the ICC. We didn't discuss this, but this is also a danger, because what will be the case if the ICJ say Israel commits genocide? What will be the situation with the prosecutor of the ICC? What can he do then? He has his investigation ongoing, by the way, against Israel and Hamas. So Yahya Sinwar and Muhammad Deif, they're not so frightened from the prosecution in the ICC. They do not go to Heathrow or to Charles de Gaulle. These are not the place they go. They go to Tehran and then to Beirut. But we are in a different place. Our friends are in different places. So this works not to both ways. It's where we can do it. We can do it against the Palestinians. By the way, you should prove it also. But so do it against the Hamas, for example. So they're not afraid of it. But we are the one, they don't have nothing to lose about it. They don't care about it. It's the same like they don't care you kill 20,000 civilians or you kill 100,000 civilians. Do you think Yahya Sinwar cares about this? He doesn't care about it a lot. On the contrary, he's pleased when more civilians are being killed, because this is what he thinks will stop Israel. So I don't think it will be, my point of view, it will be wise to do it to them also. It wouldn't save us. On the contrary, it might be very, you know, it can encourage them to say, oh, so we're going to be fair. We're going to initiate the warrant against both sides. Okay, it's not good for us. That's my point of view.
If you just may allow me to clarify, Avi just mentioned the ICC and the ICJ. So for the audience, knowledge is two different institutions. The ICJ, the International Court of Justice, deals only with dispute among states. The ICC, which is the International Criminal Court, which was established in 2002, has a jurisdiction over individuals in the state. So any ruling or any decision granted by the ICC might be very dangerous towards individuals, towards people who might found be liable for international crime. I think there are some people held already in custody with relation to the war crimes committed in Serbia, in the wars in the Balkans. It's people who were sent to prison by the ICC. So what Avi said is that the issue may spill from the ICJ to the ICC, and that would put Israeli individuals, can be generals, it can be military officers, it can be other leaders, into an actual jeopardy of custody if once they leave Israel. You know, they can be arrested in any airport in Europe. So this is the distinction I would like to emphasize. Sorry, Naomi, go ahead.
No, thank you. That was you know, a lot of lawyers on this panel, so it's very helpful.
I'm sorry for that. I understand.
Me too.
Nothing can be done.
And a lot of questions about the court and this upcoming case. Why do you think that South Africa alone has filed this case? Why have other countries, especially those who are sympathetic to Hamas or to the Palestinians, haven't joined? Do you think others will join in the future, or can future countries, bring a case like this over and over? Can individual IDF officers be prosecuted? How far could this sort of precedent go in the future against Israel?
Actually, those are two questions. The first relates, and the introduction that Dubi gave is very important for this. First of all, international law from its basis is law between countries. It's not law between individuals. So the ICJ is a classic international law tribunal which deals with countries. The ICC is different, and actually it's also a lesson learned from Second World War. Because the people understood that you deal with countries, so okay, give $1 million compensation. It doesn't deter. But if you go to the leaders who said murder people or commit genocide, then it might deter them. This is the only way. So first of all, the trials of Nuremberg and Tokyo, and then the ICTY and the ICTR tribunals of ICTY, Yugoslavia, ICTR, Rwanda, Cambodia, the Khmer Rouge, and so on. And at the end of the ICC is the most important one. Now, if we deal with the ICJ, it deals with countries, then you don't need more than one country. 20 countries, it doesn't matter, because they go to the same place. They must prove genocide, but the problem is for this stage, the early stage, they don't have to prove genocide beyond any reasonable doubt. They only have to prove to a certain limit there is a danger of genocide. So stop the war, because at the end of the day, in 4 or 5 years, maybe they'll find out, no, there was no genocide. But what they want is to stop the war now. And this is what Hamas wants. Hamas wants ceasefire. So they try to make us stop the war by force, by legal force. And you don't need more than one country for this. It doesn't matter if there are 20 countries or one country. One proxy for the Hamas, and this is South Africa. Unfortunately, we find them again in the wrong side of history, but this is the situation. Now, concerning the other thing, I think Dubi explained it very well. He said this might spill to the ICC, and it's true, because Karim Khan, the prosecutor, now deals, he has a prosecution over the situation in Palestine. That is what is called. It's a decision taken by the former prosecutor and acknowledged by the pre-trial chamber of the ICC, and they agreed that there is a state of Palestine. I don't agree to it, never mind, but that's what they decided. Now he has an ongoing investigation, especially against Hamas and also against Israel, but it was a side. He didn't rush it. Now the current situation, he dealt with it again, and he came to Israel. He saw the atrocities of the Hamas. He was shocked by what has happened. You've seen the movie, you've seen everything. On the other hand, like I told you, Hamas are the most terrible war criminals in the world. It doesn't let anything off the IDF, because if the IDF also does war crimes, then they are also going to be tried. It doesn't matter. And if you go and try to evoke this lion, then it might bite you. So we shouldn't be there. So actually, it's dangerous, because if the ICJ will say what I found is a suspicion of genocide, then the ICC prosecutor cannot ignore it. Cannot say I didn't see it. It's a very important tribunal, and this might make him go and be more hasty with his investigation, and we don't want it to happen. We don't need this.
Thank you. Another question just involving the court proceedings is, could the US or Israel go to court to try to force the Hamas leaders who are sheltering in Qatar or elsewhere to, be taken to court? And could Israel also go to court to get a release of the hostages? Is that possible in this proceeding or in a different proceeding? Is there anything legally that could require that?
First of all, the second question, yes, we can go to any court. Any court will say that the hostages must be released immediately. And I'm sure that Yahya Sinwar will hear the decision of the court and immediately will release them. We're talking about the most terrible monsters of the world. He is not human. So doesn't care about courts. Taking a 4 months baby or eight month baby, and it's so terrible. How can they do such things? So they will listen to a court. Unfortunately,
but there's nothing the court could do to compel him. There's nothing.
He can give any court will give a warrant, release them. Okay. So the United Nations, the Security Council will say it, but
it's not enforceable.
Yes, this is the problem. Now, concerning what is happening in Qatar, I think it's the same. For example, the same South Africa. There was the leader of Sudan. It was a arrest warrant by the ICC. What was his name, Dobi? No, the famous leader of Sudan, the war criminal. Yes. He had an international arrest warrant made by the ICC, given to the Interpol, what we say,
Omar Bashir. Omar
Bashir, yes. He was in South Africa, and they did nothing about it. They must, and they are part of the ICC, by the way, and they did nothing about it. So what happened? He was there. He was sitting there. He was staying there. They told them give him to Hague, but South Africa is not Europe, and they didn't do it. And they let them be there. Nothing good to do it. I don't see Qatar will do anything to Ania or to the leaders of Hamas. Unfortunately, also, this is a cynical world.
A few other questions relevant to your experience, given your extensive knowledge and experience with Gaza. Is there anything that you would have done differently, looking back on 2005? Anything that could have been done then or since then to prevent October 7th from happening, and another October 7th from happening in the future?
No, I don't think I'm going to go into it, because this is a more military actions, and unfortunately we were surprised, and I don't know what to do, because it's going to be also checked by commissions later on. And the first thing. The second, it's not a legal issue. I understand a little about military, but I don't think it will be good for me to relate to it. Sorry.
No problem. Other questions. I don't know if this is legal so much. I think I know the answer myself, but several people have asked, why doesn't Egypt allow children, women, elderly, others to temporarily move either to Egypt itself in camps, or in the vast Sinai desert that's pretty much empty, which could be a sort of no man's land between now and then? Or, why doesn't any Arab country, for that matter, really help the Palestinians? That's, I think, again, an obvious answer. But is there anything, again, that you think Egypt could do reasonably that would not endanger Egypt for the time being, to prevent more civilian casualties?
Well, unfortunately, Egypt does not work for Israeli as a matter of, as long as maybe Dubi knows otherwise, but I don't think that Assisi works for Netanyahu. Is not one of his ministers. They're a sovereign country. They don't want this problem. We know that Menachem Begin wanted to give Gaza, take the Gaza to Sadat. Yes, he didn't want it. Actually, after 1967, after 1949, the independence war, when Jordan annexed Judea and Samaria, Egypt did not annex Gaza. They didn't want this place. They didn't want it. There were military there, but they didn't want this place. Never. So they're not going to change their mind. They don't need. You can take this problem for yourself. We don't need this problem. They know that if they go into Egypt, this will bring only troubles to them. But maybe Dubi thinks otherwise, because the Egyptian better than me.
No, I don't think otherwise. I must tell you, as you rightly said, in 1948, Gaza Gaza Strip, which was part of Eretz Israel, of Palestine, of British Palestine. It was occupied by the Egyptian army, but Egypt never annexed Gaza into Egypt. And by the way, since 1948, a Palestinian in Gaza hardly could travel to Egypt. He would have to obtain a visa. They gave them hell. In many other opportunities later on, 1956, 1967, 1977, during the peace talks, when Menachem Begin offered Gaza to the Egyptians so generously, they refused. And furthermore, when we handled negotiation with the Egyptian following the disengagement from Gaza, and we begged the Egyptian somehow to bring security personnel, Egyptian security personnel into Gaza to assist the Palestinian Authority, to have a better control over the area, the Egyptian refused. They simply refused. They say, we don't want to be involved there. And furthermore, any idea raised in Israel somehow to solve the issue by resettlement of Palestinian refugees in Sinai, it drives the Egyptian nuts. They consider it as an hostile reaction of Israel, and that's why I think, at least recently, our politicians are more careful in those, suggestions and ideas how to solve the Palestinian issue in Gaza on Egypt's expense.
Thank you. That makes sense. I know we're coming up on the hour, so I want to give each of you one more question and sort of closing opportunity and conclusion. I'm sorry for all that.
And we'll continue tomorrow.
And we'll continue this tomorrow. Sorry for all of those many questions I couldn't get to, but I'm trying to do my best to consolidate. After the war ends, which hopefully, will succeed in our mission, what do you think is the likelihood of the state of Israel and the people going back to their pre-war protests around judicial reform or trying to prosecute Bibi Netanyahu? Do you think that will come back to the surface, or do you think people will have moved on? I know there's been some sort of progress there, but I'm just sort of curious what you think the day after the war will look like, domestically inside of Israel.
It's for you, Dubi.
It's for you.
It's for me? For me or for
Either
you?
way. Either way.
Well, okay, so I'll start. If you refer to the legal reforms that at least me, I consider more to be a legal pogrom than reforms, this is done. This is done, mainly because of public pressures, was also given two opinions recently issued by our Supreme Court that nullified those legislation proceedings which done so hastily by the Knesset in order to implement those reforms. This is done. I'll try to say it as short as I can. No one, we just mentioned that no one on earth is willing to assume responsibility over Gaza. The nonsense that announced in Israel time and again about an international control, a coalition of countries, no one will take Gaza. The only entity which is available to repossess Gaza is the Palestinian Authority, right or wrong, good or bad, most probably more bad than good, because we all know what's the Palestinian Authority, but this is the only option. So, and because of internal political consideration, and mainly the association, the close political association between Netanyahu and the settlers and the radical right in Israel, he will oppose any idea which involves the Palestinian Authority in Gaza's future. That's why we all expect sort of a deadlock in this context in the very, very near future. A deadlock that pretty much may bring an end to his current coalition, because I think people like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, the radical right, will retire from the government. Will he surrender to the American pressures to bring the Palestinian Authority into Gaza? Because this is an idea which is strongly supported, which is advocated and supported strongly by the United States. If he will successfully reject this issue, so Gaza will remain unattended. I mean, nobody else take over. And we believe that, as I say, those are the seeds of a newly coming political crisis in Israel.
To be very brief, there is a saying, nothing good is threatening us.
It's threatening us.
Yes. So I'm trying to be optimistic. It's not easy. And still, I think we should believe that things will go in a better manner. I don't think nothing is lost. I think we have a lot to fight for. And I think that first of all, Israel liberal public has rose his head, and I think it was astonishing the last year what has happened. I'm not talking about politicians. I'm not a politician, I'm not in politics, but I'm saying that the Israel liberal democracy is strong, and we've seen it the last year. The public, the court stood for the democracy, especially in the last two decisions, but not only there, and they are there. This is very important, because I think I think Israel, if Israel will lose, I don't believe in democracy that is not liberal, by the way. I don't think that there's nothing like a not liberal democracy. There is no such thing. And if Israel will lose its liberal identity, its liberal DNA, which is its power, I think that this is the most threatening thing of the existence of Israel. And I think that Israel, the liberal public, has been joined, has been combined together because of what has happened, and everybody understands it. And I think that's the Supreme Court, which is the guardian of the liberal nature of Israel, values or nature, yes, of Israel, has stood there because of the power of the public who stood with him. And I think this is the most important thing, and it relates not only to the end of the what they call reform, which we call it pogrom, and I call it a revolution. But it's not only because of this. It's only because of the war. It's also because of the war. And we can see now, and you related to it earlier, because you see the youngsters, they are going there, and unfortunately, and everybody cries for every loss of life. They are being fighting there, and they sacrifice their life for us, and are not afraid, because they believe in the state of Israel, but they believe in this state of Israel, the way it was established, a Jewish democratic state. And I think as long as we stick to these fundamental parts of Israel, then we will prevail at the end of the day. I don't know exactly how this will happen, but I think at the end of the day, I hope so, and I do think that we will win, not exactly in the manner that everybody expects. It's not that there will be no terror, it's not that there will be no enemies, it's not. But we are strong. And I think that our enemy sees it. And it began at the demonstrations, at the way that the public stood and said, no, we do not agree to lose our democracy. We are not going to be like Poland or Hungary because we have a different nature. And I think this is what, at the end of the day, will make us also prevail the war.
Well, I think that's a very optimistic and positive note to end on. So mostly, which I really appreciate. And it's really wonderful to hear from you and great to meet you. And as always, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule with work and with soccer And otherwise, we really enjoyed it. And Dubi, thank you for making this happen. As always, we thank our many hundreds of viewers from around the world, not only the US. We'll be keeping our eyes peeled tomorrow to see what happens. It'll be very interesting for all of us. And I want you all to know that as the CEO of University of Haifa in the US, you have so many supporters in the United States. We're all thinking of you, we're praying for you, we're supporting you, we're volunteering. Many people are coming to Israel right now to help. So know that we're behind you and we stand with you, and we love our family and friends in Israel. So we're in this with you. So thank you again to Avi and Dubi for your time and insights today, all of our listeners. For those whose questions we couldn't answer, we hope to address them on a future webinar. If you have any questions, please email info@asuh.org about how to get involved with us or about ASUH. Again, for those of you looking to give back to our student soldiers fighting right now for Israel, you can support our Emergency Scholarship Fund for Reserve Soldiers. Please go to our website, asuh.org/donate. They're continuing to serve and defend Israel, and they desperately need some financial support to do so. To stay up to date on all of our news and our coming webinars, again, please visit our website, follow us across all social media. You'll learn about our next webinar coming up on January 24th, where we will feature Professor Roy Solomon, who's a full professor of cognitive neuroscience at University of Haifa. He's also the co-founder of Safe Heart, which is a nonprofit initiative committed to supporting the survivors of the Nova Rave massacre through emergency mental health services. Here at ASUH, we've been raising a lot of money for Safe Heart since October 7th, and we're really honored to be able to do so and to host him in a couple of weeks. So again, thank you all for joining us. Stay safe, and our thoughts are with Israel. And as always, Am Yisrael Chai, and we hope to see you again soon. Thanks, everyone.